Well, hello again, everyone. This is Bob Martin, the RCSubGuy with the Drydocks.com, and this is an addendum to the build blog that I had for our 48th scale Disney Nautilus. This pertains to you yahoos that want to make your Disney Nautilus fully functional as an RC model. Now, this is not going to be a step-by-step walkthrough because there is a lot of duplication of steps from the static buildup that you may or may not have already seen. What we're going to be doing in this is going through the actual steps for the conversion of the kit into the RC model, i.e. making all of the brackets for installation of the watertight cylinder, setup of the watertight cylinder, setup and integration of the tilting propeller mechanism, and implementation of the rudder. So, let's get started. Alright guys, before we get deep into this, I want to make this little addendum to add to the beginning of the video. Converting this model to RC is absolutely not, in any way, shape, or form whatsoever, an easy task. No matter what instructions I put forth, it is still going to be incumbent upon you to have a base level of fabrication, electronics, RC knowledge. That is absolutely fundamental, and it is highly unlikely that you will succeed in this endeavor unless you have that skill set. Just be honest with yourself. Make sure you have the skills necessary to do it. If you don't, look for someone who does, who can give you a hand. So you have been warned. It's not a task for the unskilled. If you have patience, perseverance, and that skill set, you can make it happen. Let's see what you need to do. So the first thing that we need to do is take a look at the stern section of the boat. This is how it comes. And you can see I've already taken a step here. Now you're going to have a pre-drilled dimple right there in the boat. And what you're going to need to do is drill that out to 1/8 and insert a little piece of 1/8 brass rod. All right, it only needs to stick out about 1/8 of an inch. And you're going to do the same thing on the cover plate right here. And you're going to take your tilting prop assembly, and you can see we've got the brass bushing in there, the oil light bushing. That's an oil impregnated bushing that's going to allow our prop shaft to move really, really well. And then you're going to take a piece of 1/16 inch, either brass or stainless steel, put a Z-bend in it, and you're going to go ahead and feed that through the tilting propeller assembly, and then put it in place. So this is what it looks like when you get it installed, and you can see it's going to tilt once you get it all done like that. The other thing you're going to need to do is take a piece of 3/16 stainless rod, and you're going to cut it to length until it sticks out when it's installed in here by about 3/8 of an inch. This is roughed up. The surface of the rod is roughed up, press fit into the boat, and glued permanently with Loctite or another adhesive. If you're really, kind of worried about it slipping, you could also drill it and pin it as well. Although I will caution you, stainless rod is tricky to drill, may not be the easiest thing to do. And when you get that all done, you can slip your propeller into the tilting propeller assembly, and it's going to look like that. Now, for now, we're just testing it, okay? Because if you'll watch here, when this tilts, it actually impacts the hull. So what we're going to do is actually going to make a little notch right here for the propeller to slip into, so you get about 10 degrees of tilt on the propeller. It doesn't need to be a lot. If you don't like cutting into your boat, the only other option would be to go with a very large scimitar style propeller that sweeps backward, but then of course you're losing all of the scale authenticity, so I wouldn't recommend it. I'm just going to go ahead and grind this out with the Dremel, and I'll show you the shape that I come up with once it's in place. Alright, this is what I came up with. Basically, I just made this a 90 degree. That's all I did. Just took the little rounding out. And the other important thing is when you install your tilting assembly here, if I can get this out with one hand, there's two sides to it. There's the lip side and the bushing side. The lip side is what goes toward the back, and that creates the proper amount of spacing for the propeller. It pushes it out so that it doesn't impact as much there. So it's pretty important to put a little notch in the drive shaft there, and that's just going to ensure that you don't get any shaft slippage when you torque down your universal joint, which is right there. So we're going to go ahead and put this in place, if I can do this with one hand. There we go. Now you can see, you get a nice degree of deflection before it potentially impacts the hull. That's a little overkill for what you're going to need. Just something like that is enough to give you really, really good pitch control in this boat. Now what we're going to go ahead and do is put our universal joint on there, torque it down to the shaft, and then we're going to take our intermediate shaft right here. We're going to do the same thing with the notch, put that in the other end, and it should stick out and run like that. So when you're done, you should have something that looks like this. And if we lift this up, you can check for nice smooth rotation. Make sure your angles are all good. And then if everything seems to match up, a little drop of mineral oil is good to go on the inside, although that is self-lubricated. And the other thing I want to mention, I did put a little bend. You see that little bend in that control rod, and that'll just help it clear the universal joint when it is fully in the surface position. Now, a little bit of grease on each of these swivel points. And then you can go ahead and slip this in place. And in theory, if everything lines up as it should, it'll kind of lock in and everything will be secured in the back. You can put a little bit of RTV or a small drip of CA in the corner just to lock it in, make sure it doesn't come out. And if you ever need back into it, you could take a razor saw and just cut it so that you can get back in there with some access. All right, I've gone ahead and glued the stern on here, and again, you can see we got tilting, we got spinning. So far, everything is good. Notice too, this comes right out. It's a spline fit that fits over the splined hub in the back, and of course I'm not looking right now, so I can't get it. Oh, there we go, I did it. So what we're going to be doing is basically ensuring that this doesn't move forward. These parts are your cylinder bulkheads. Note that there is a front and a back. The back of the one piece has little notches that fit over this lip, and the front doesn't. They go straight down flush. Same thing, down flush, little notches, and that'll make sure you get all your alignment correct. Now, these were originally set up for 3 3/4 inch cylinders, and we've gone to something a little bit different, which is what Jason is working on here right now, and that is going to be the heart and soul of the Nautilus. It's 80 mil diameter instead of 3.75 inches, and so you will, if you elect to go ahead with this, get a spacer that'll fit in here and allow it to completely nestle and hold the watertight cylinder in place. So we talked about these supports, and the other thing that you're going to do is use these spacers that you get, and you're going to glue them to those supports. We talked about that a minute ago. And you want to make sure they're to the outside to give maximum support to the cylinder. So now everything is in there. You're going to grab this part right here, which is the lockdown bulkhead, and it goes right back here, like this. So what you're going to do is put your cylinder in, center the ballast tank on these supports, mark where the end of your cylinder is, and then install the bulkhead. So this now has locked in the cylinder. It can't move, and we'll get to securing it from the other end there in a moment. But what we're going to move on to now is the servo tower. I'll call it the servo tower. That sounds cool. And that's this part here. And what you're going to want to do is take your servo tower and your servo horns, and just make sure you file them so that they move nice and easily. Really easily, nice and smooth. Once you get them so that they're not binding or anything, put a little grease on there. Doesn't hurt anything. And then once you do that, you use these, and they just slip in this hole on the end, press it all the way down, and that locks the arm in. All right, here is the assembled servo tower with our little linkage horns on there. And this spacing is not critical. You're going to end up being about 1 inch back from this little seam back here. You just want to make it so that it fits nice and tight in the hull, because you can bend these to whatever, you know, position you need to in order to make them work the best. All right, what we're going to work on now is the support strut. Now, normally you'd have these support struts in here, but we need to run a rudder linkage, and we're going to be super sneaky. We're going to run it inside one of these. In order to do that, you're going to use the 1/4 inch by 1/8 inch rectangular tube. And what you're going to need to do is figure out which side you want to run your rudder linkage on. I've elected to do it on the port side. And weapon of choice is the milling bit in the Dremel, and what you're going to do is mill a slot all the way down the length of this little pocket here, so that this piece of tube will slip into it all the way into the hole. All right, this is what you end up with. This is what the channel looks like. Now, note, because this is coming in on an angle, you need to grind into the boat at an angle. So you just need to keep working at this until you get that perfect fitment in the back part there. And then once this is all done, you can glue and fill around here to fill that seam up. Now this is underneath, you're not going to see it, so if there is that slight difference between, you know, that base and this base, it's really not a big deal. If it bothers you a lot, you could cut, you know, each side of this off and glue it, you know, in the middle. It's a lot of extra work. I really don't think it's worth it, but it's completely up to you. Your boat. Once that's done, you're going to need to drill a hole in the back, 1/8 hole, and that'll allow the linkage to come out, and then it's going to do a little jig and hook up to our rudder. All right, you're going to use the supplied flat brass. You're going to drill a 5/64 hole in one end, a 1/8 hole on the other. The overall length is 3/4 of an inch and 1/2 inch distance between the holes. This is not critical. It's not critical, but that's roughly what you want. And you can see I roughed up this side right here. And the idea is this is going to slip over the nub on the end of the rudder like this, and make our control horn for the rudder. So once you get that all done, go ahead and glue that into place. Note, the boat's upside down right now. When you put this in, there's a correct way and an incorrect way. So make sure you put it correctly. And you want the horn, in this case, because the boat's upside down, on the top, on the side that you are working on. All right, couple things to note here. In order to insert this control rod, linkage rod, you gotta keep the rudder out. So you gotta slide it in and then snap it in. And it's super easy, guys, to put in and out. This bend is the hardest thing. You're just gonna have to play with this to get the proper setting. But if you take a look, it's about a 45-degree turn, and then make sure that your Z-bend is vertical, not sideways, all right? All of these bends are not in the same plane. The Z-bend is vertical. This is about 45 degrees, and then 45 degrees, all right? That's what we want. Now, the last thing, we obviously want to make sure that this isn't going to impact the prop when it's all the way up. I had to push the milling of this all the way to the outside. So what I'm going to need to do is put a little spacer to keep that to the outside. And then that way there'll be no chance of it impacting the prop. So maybe just a little piece of plastic underneath, you know, a little chunky. And that'll just keep that rod all the way to the outside, and then there'll be no chance of it impacting the prop. And we got lots of throw. Lots of throw. Really good. So here is the completed rudder linkage. And you can see nice, smooth operation. At least 30 degrees of throw is what you're aiming for here, boys and girls. And, of course, it's not impacting our propeller tilting-ishness in any way, shape, or form. So now what we're going to do, throw the cylinder back in here and set up our servo tower. All right, I want you to note I have not glued in the tower yet. And it doesn't matter if you did by accident. It'll just make life a lot easier at this point if you didn't. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to center the prop, center the rudder, and center our little arms here, and then you're just going to use a marker, and we're going to mark the linkage shafts right in the middle on both sides. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create an L bend in these going out and out. All right, I'll show you what I mean here in a minute. All right, here is the completed linkage tower. And I do want to note what I went ahead and did, just because it's going to work better. I drilled a second hole a lot closer to the hub on the tilting dive plane, because the throw is not very much that you need. It only ends up being about 1/4 of an inch from lock to lock, as you can see there. But this works really good. Nice and smooth, controlled. Rudder is working really, really good. Lots of throw. That was left normally, by the way. And basically, I really don't think these are going to end up coming out. And because this is kind of trapped underneath the strut there, it can't come out. So there you go. Now let's get our cylinder in and connect it to the linkages. All right, here are the completed linkages. I got my cylinder all fired up so I can test the throws and everything. Your adjustability, by the way, comes from these magnetic connectors. So you can just loosen that and you can move that shaft forward and back a little bit to make it perfection. But we're all centered here right now. And we can watch and see how these things go. So we got rudder. Got nice throw there. And we got our tilting propeller. So now all we need to do is rig up our drivetrain here, and then we can test all of the functions of the boat. All right, time to test. We got the cylinder all powered up. Now I put the dog bone adapter on there, and you just basically got to cut the drive shaft to length so that it fits into the dog bone adapter that you're supplied with there. As we've seen before, we've got our tilting propeller, we've got our rudder, and now when we fire up our throttle, we can see we can move our tilting prop. There's no clinking, clanking, banging, nothing like that. So we are good. All we've got to do now is, not all, and now we're going to move on to the front hold downs, and then the cylinder hold downs, and then we're going to be right there. All right, here's your forward hold down bulkhead. Now I left this intentionally kind of blank, so you can do whatever you want. I elected to drill a 1/8 hole in here, and it just goes right flush with the forward edge. and then marked it out with pencil on the bulkhead. And now I can take it out, and I'm going to drill into the bulkhead about 1/8 of an inch, maybe 3/16 of an inch. And then we're going to be using a little piece of 1/8 brass to make a little retaining pin. All right, so this is what we have. I gone ahead and pinned this, and so you can see it's kind of connected in there, and that friction fit will keep this in. This is not glued yet. We want to make sure that it's correctly aligned to the hull. Now, the other thing that we need to do is grab a paint pen, because there's a really important part of this that we need to do. You need to mark vertical on the end cap on both ends. And when you put this together, always put these marks together. Arrows point forward. Arrows point forward. All right? Now, what that'll do is it'll make sure that this, which is your orientation in the rear, aligns to the cylinder, which aligns to the end cap, which aligns to the front. Now that this is all done, we can glue that bulkhead in place, and then in order to pull the cylinder, you just pop the pin, and the whole thing comes out. Super simple. All right, the last thing I want to talk about is the forward hold downs. And then we're pretty well done here, people. Couple parts. We got our little cam. It's a cam. We're going to drop that in. And then we got our little lock. Cam and lock. And the way this works, obviously your upper hull will go down. It'll fall in place like that. And then you put your ram in, give it a twist clockwise, and now that it's twisted up, that can't come off and it can't come out. It's magic. Go back the other way, pull it out, and I'm going to show you how that all works inside. This slides back, and you twist it into place, and then the cam pushes up the lock, which locks that in place, and you can't come out. Super awesome. All right, if you've been following along correctly, doing everything I did, this is what you're going to end up with. We got our test hose on here. This can just get coiled up and tucked out of the way. We got our retaining pin. That works really good. May or may not have a servo output in the front. Probably not. Don't need it. This is our intake for the ballast. You want this as high in the boat as possible, so likely in the back of your wheelhouse is where you're going to end up putting that. Inserts in the cradles. We got our drive shaft, nice and smooth, no interference. Magnetic connectors, power switch, and that's it. Servo tower. Everything is looking really good. So, you're done. No, you're not done. You got lots more to do, but you've got the hard part done. Hope you enjoyed this. This is the RC conversion aspect of our 48th Disney Nautilus kit. I'll put the link to the kit in the description so that if you want your very own RC Disney Nautilus, you can grab one for your very own self. All of the information about the RC conversion parts will also be on the product page as well. With that, we're going to let you go. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.